How's it? I'm Honan,
I'm Oliver.
and this is the K-pop podcast. And today we're just gonna do a general news discussion. Basically, there's a lot of stuff that has happened in the world of K-pop that we haven't really talked about, so we're just gonna kind of throw that all into this one episode for you guys.
Yeah, it might end up coming kind of weird based on like when this comes out. There might have been other stuff, or like some of this is kind of old news now, or whatever. But it's been a while since we've talked about the goings on and stuff.
Yeah,
So I guess we'll start with some good news. Twice's contract, which we've mentioned before, we were kind of talking about being like, well, the 7 years is coming up. Like, would every member resign? I think there are a lot of questions over some of the members, like especially Jonghyun and Mina. I think
I
people
was
were
surprised
kind of
Jung Young
expecting.
resigned. It didn't seem like she wasn't sure about like continuing with Twice or something. It seems like that, but we don't really know
Yeah,
what goes on behind closed doors. So it's like,
yeah. I mean, obviously she was having a lot of health issues and stuff, and that was affecting her mental state and whatnot. And yeah, but obviously we don't know. We didn't know what her the extent of everything, but yeah, all 9 members re-signed. I didn't say in the article how long for.
yeah.
Presumably it's going to be like 2 or 3 years, but I don't know. um, but it's the first. It marks the first time a JYP group has re-signed in its entirety.
Wow,
So
that's
that's an
crazy.
interesting,
Huh.
yeah, interesting fact.
So SM Entertainment then it seems like keeps groups longevity wise more than other labels do. Like,
Yeah, well, SM kind of they have a thing where they don't ever officially disband their groups, right? Like
yeah, if
if
you
you
don't
ask,
say it and it just kind of
yeah,
secretly shuffles away, like
like
yeah.
if you ask Luna, she'll tell you that FX isn't disbanded, but
Mm.
they may as well be.
Yeah.
It's just they aren't officially, and it means that like SES, for example, were able to come back in like 2015 and just release something, and it wasn't like,
I
oh
think
my
that
god, that
open
yeah,
door policy is kind of cool.
yeah,
Hey, you want to do something? Like Girls' Generation is having a comeback album. Like
exactly, yeah,
that's like,
yeah,
that's
with a bunch of
crazy.
the members not in the company anymore, and they're still able to just go ahead and do that. It's yeah, I think that's how it should be. Um, and that so we have we yesterday we had Twice announcing their 11th mini album, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think so.
Blackpink are perhaps going to announce their comeback tonight
After
within
their PUBG collaboration.
in the next 35 minutes, perhaps we will
Yeah.
see news of that. Girls' Generation, of course, are coming back next month, so all of that. So August is shaping up to be pretty eventful, which
Which
is
one of those are you
nice.
most excited about?
Oh, Girls' Generation, come on,
I
come
had a
on!
I
You
saw a
don't even have to
YouTube
ask.
poll and it made me like cry a little sad because it was that exact question. It was like Blackpink, I forget the third group they had on there. Then they had Girls' Generation, and Girls' Generation had like not even 2% of the votes, and I
Yeah,
was like,
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like K-pop's kind of international explosion is obviously it's kind of been going up more and more year by year, but I would say it really kind of started ramping up in 2018, which was after the last full Girls' Generation comeback we had. So a lot of people, a lot of fans have never really experienced them, and I've seen a lot of videos going around like reactors and stuff doing like discovering Girls' Generation. Like I heard that these girls are coming back and it's a big deal, so I'm checking them out for the first time, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that it's a first time thing for a lot of fans. But
yeah, it's
yeah,
such a iconic group. It's like to me, Girls' Generation, like not. Here's my chance to throw a Metallica
here's
reference.
Metallica. Yeah,
It's
they
like
come
listening to metal and not having heard or known Metallica to me.
right.
That's pretty iconic group to the genre itself. Like
Yeah,
even if you haven't gone out of your way to do so, I feel like it had to have come across you naturally
yeah,
somehow.
they're just like inseparable from the identity of what K-pop is to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Other good news, we also had, speaking of 11th album, Super Junior released their 11th album. Well, part of their 11th album yesterday, which was great. Loved it, of course. 17 years and still going strong.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely
I liked that
a
video.
landscape
That
without them.
I thought the music video was cool. The one they shared it to me on the live, but it was
Oh, you checked out Don't Wait, right?
Yeah.
Like 50s style, like
Yeah.
yeah.
It
They
was
released
old
another one.
school
They
style
released
like that,
yeah.
yeah.
That was the pre-release, and they released another one yesterday.
I
Mango.
always get surprised when I think He Chul isn't gonna be in something, you know, and he has
And he
just that
pops up.
random cameo
Yeah,
appearance, you know? Like he
yeah,
doesn't do any of the dancing stuff obviously, but it's always cool how they just have that random cameo of him.
yeah. And he has lines and stuff. He's not
Yeah.
totally out of it. Um, yeah. So I guess we'll cover some of the other things that have happened in recent weeks. Um, I guess maybe one that we can start on because we talked about this a bit, and I think we're still kind of a reserving judgment on it. But the Garam, the Seraphim situation.
Yeah.
Um, so as of right now, Hy-Vee is still maintaining that they're gonna say more stuff when they have more to say. And as far as everything is concerned, she is still a member of the group, but she's certainly not being treated like a member of the group currently. But it also has emerged that she's still doing some things, like she still signed albums. She
Hmm.
was still seen going to the building and doing stuff like that. And then she was still shown on a Japanese show that they were on, but that was filmed months ago, so it wasn't like a live
It was
thing.
pre-filmed, yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't they didn't cut her out of it or told them not to broadcast it or whatever. So yeah, it's a bit again. I don't want to make any kind of leaps to conclusions about whether or not the things about her are true or how far they're true or whatever. But I'm curious, like how much Hybe is gaining or losing from keeping her in the group versus
Yeah.
kicking her out.
I I'm trying to like I want to reserve judgment on it until like because I feel like sometimes a long time after these things happen you find out the whole story
Right.
and then because you've seen some of the ones with like actors if where they have these bullying scandals. I think there was an actor it happened to and then they found out it was not real or something like
Yeah.
that, and it was quite a while after it initially happened that it seemed like that news came out or whatever. So it's like, but I don't know. Garam's is one of the things I have read. Hers has like tangible evidence to it
Yeah.
and stuff. It's not like just completely hearsay. It seems like,
Yeah.
but it's tricky too because I could when they said like her situation was her defending a friend that was bullied or something was one of the arguments I saw.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess I could see that being a thing that happened, and then you getting a write up if you did that. But I don't know. It's.
I mean, it's the craziest thing as well. It's like imagine trying to find like retroactively get all of the details of what happened in essentially like high school drama that
Yeah.
that were I think we've probably all had things like fights and arguments and beef with people in at school, like where it's like, oh, actually, yeah, but this person associated with they said this to this person and they said this to, and it's always intricate and dramatic and over the top, like it always is. And they're now trying to kind of quantify that in a legal sense. It's like
Yeah.
it's obviously very difficult to do when there's only a very limited amount of evidence for any of it.
It's I guess because it's not that long ago in this case because she is still really
Yeah,
young. But I am like a firm believer in someone not being the same person they were in high school or middle school. Obviously, was
yeah,
like Sujin's case for Idol. I thought was a little
yeah.
like
And
really
I mean,
her career's over because like
you change an enormous amount from age like 13 through to 16. Like each year is like you're growing up hugely, right? And
yeah.
changing a lot. But yeah, I don't know. But I still think it would make more sense from a business perspective if they had cut her loose. And like, even though that sucks, like it really does, especially if she ends up actually being innocent. And because so many comments I see on them, especially in Korea, just like, oh, let's hope she's not involved again. I don't want to see her face again, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that attitude is going to change, even if she ends up being
Cleared.
proven innocent. People will
Yeah.
still have a negative opinion towards her, and that's not going to change. So
Yeah, hey, I feel like in K-pop too, like the first opinion someone has of you is like really important from debut, and like
yeah,
she's had the worst possible like entrance
yeah.
in as a
It
debuting artist.
like even though I feel like a lot of people 180'd or maybe not 180, but like maybe like 120'd on like the Jimin and Mina situation, that doesn't leave the door open for Jimin to come back to the industry. You know,
No, and there's still
like if she
people who will
did, people
never
would still go to
believe
town on her.
the even if they find out it's reversed or something. There's still people who will never believe that. Like, so
Yeah.
it changes it.
So yeah, so maybe it does make more sense just for them to have cut her loose rather than to kind of leave her in this limbo state. Um, I don't know, but at the same time, I do respect that they want to stick by their artist and fight for their artist because I do wish that that Cube, for example, were more proactive in doing and genuinely wanting to take the side of their artists and understand things, like how Pledis were with Mingyu from 17, or equally kind of giving them a period of like, yeah, they did something bad and they're gonna suffer for it, but come back at the end, like Hyunjin with JYP.
Yeah, I do think groups like in Idol's case, like Sujin was actually an interesting part of that group, and it is actually something missing that she's not there, in my opinion. Even with the good comeback like Tomboy and everything that Idol had, I think there's an element missing now that she's not in that group.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think with like Sserafim, I've seen people say just because of the whole scandal that's happened, they're like, oh well, she wasn't useful to the group anyways. Just throw her out, like it's all Sakura, Chaewon, all this stuff, blah blah blah, all that same kind of stuff. And I'm like, if you watch the group as six with her, even though I obviously don't know if it's all true and everything, you can't. I don't agree with that like sentiment. She very much visually is striking and works in the dynamic of the group, regardless of people not wanting her there because of the bullying scandal and stuff. I don't think it's right to just be like, oh well, she just sucked anyways or something. I don't think that's true.
I think people will just use that as a kind of deflation or whatever to justify their feelings about it. I think the thing is, I think with Sujin, while it's undoubtedly a miss because of her ability and her charisma and presence on stage, I do think that it's, even though the song itself and performances of it might objectively have been better, I do think Tomboy would not have been as much of a success if she was still in the group because of the attitude the people had to have. And that's unfortunately the kind of the business decision that has to be made. Like, without, if she was still there, then of course, then the reception of it would have been much more
you
negative.
Just got to be a good old goddess Irene behind me to just swipe those scandals to the side and still have successful comebacks.
I mean, maybe there's a point where you're at a point of popularity where you can just kind of get away with things. But I mean, well, I think Irene kind of justified herself by being like, oh, she was upset about getting electrocuted or something, which is kind of fair enough. But whatever, I don't know. Anyway, I think as before, it's like a kind of wait and see situation, but I'm kind of expecting that she's going to be quietly sort of let go and they're just going to continue as five, because I think they're going to weigh up the pros and cons from a business point of view and determine that it's better off if they just let her go.
Yeah, you think they try a little Instagram post with her included in it, and they check the reactions.
See what the response is. Yeah, I mean,
upload a vlog video with her included or something to test the waters.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
it's a difficult spot to be in for a company as well. Like, how, especially you spent millions and all this time preparing a group, and then you have to deal with this right away. Like, it's tough.
It is unfortunate because I do think the dynamic of 6 looks cooler than 5 in choreography and everything like that too. Like the things they built their choreography around with the whole like floor choreography thing and stuff in the beginning. I think it's unfortunate. Like IVE is 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 6 is like one of those numbers they're going for a lot with like the new 4th gen groups.
That's interesting. Actually, I haven't really thought of that. I've always thought it's just because it's not symmetrical that it makes it a bit more difficult to do some things. But you can do some cool formations. I know G-Friend obviously was 6, and they showed some cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of wait and see on that one. If it turns out to later be a false thing, I think there kind of has to be a new standard to how people react to those kind of accusations, because then it's
Yeah.
just too easy to ruin someone's career off of a statement or something, you know.
Yeah, but it's never gonna change, is it? Like people, and I think people, especially international fans, will always look for any opportunity to virtue signal and look at me, I'm condemning this evil bully right away. Look
Yeah.
how hard I'm coming down on them to show that I don't agree with bullying. Like, yes, congratulations, here's your likes, but ultimately you're not actually doing the situation any favors, and you're not helping anyone.
The thing is too, like it's a weird when you find out it's a thing from like adolescence or from like middle school or high school and stuff too. I always just kind of have the general idea of like, and depending on how bad it is, of course. But if it's just
Yeah,
like someone being kind of having a bad personality in that time as a growing person or whatever, I'm usually pretty forgiving of that in general, because like I highly doubt they're the same person anymore if they like. Most
yeah,
people aren't, but I don't know. That's just a
yeah,
personal belief. I know
yeah.
that worldwide that's not a general belief that people have in that situation. Yeah, we'll wait and see on Garam. It's unfortunate that it's a thing, but it is.
Yeah, I do wonder how long it will be until, because they must be getting near to a point where they have to be thinking about their first comeback, right? And it's going to be a decision that's going to have to be made about whether or not to include her in it. Um, if it's going to be like a have her record parts but then don't promote, or don't record anything at all, like, because those are two very different, or have her fully involved, right? Like those are their three choices.
Yeah,
It's
it's even though they say publicly they're still behind her or whatever, it just seems like they've basically deleted her off the map of everything they
Yeah,
release.
they're certainly trying to keep her under covers for now.
Yeah. I don't
So
think
yeah, I
hers
guess.
is something they can just keep quiet about all this time and then throw her back in, because the second she's thrown
Hmm,
back in, I think everyone's just gonna get
right
mad
back
about
under the
it. Like,
spotlight. Yeah,
yeah. I don't think it's not the case of like Irene or someone where it'll show back up later and no one's gonna have a problem like with it or something, you know. I think it's gonna not go over well if they do it that way.
yeah, for sure. So I guess next in our news we can talk about Jessi.
Yeah, this is one that kind of sucks. It's two people I really like involved in it, and it like Jessi. I don't know if you saw, like she did like a live where she basically said that she hadn't confirmed to them that she wasn't gonna be doing Showterview anymore or not, kind of thing, and then just found out that she wasn't gonna be involved anymore and
Right.
stuff. It
Yeah.
was weird.
I didn't see the live. So yeah, so well, to sum up the situation. So Jessi obviously was doing a very highly successful show on SBS's YouTube Showterview, where she would interview various stars, not just idol stars, but like various Korean celebrities,
Yeah,
actors, influencers, all kinds of
she
different
interviewed Emma
people.
Stone at one point.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
which is probably the most measured and reserved I've ever seen Jessi interviewing anyone. But
yeah.
yeah, and like it was very like it was cool because she was very, obviously Jessie's not one for much of a filter, and she is able to get a side out of a lot of her guests that you don't normally see otherwise. Even though when like some of them are there, like when Joy was there, for example, there were like the SM managers off to the side being like, maybe let's not talk about this, or just like trying to like make sure that nothing too
Keep
crazy
it a
was
little
said or
more
whatever.
controlled. Yeah, because she went
Yeah,
wild when Mino was on there. There was just
yeah. There's sometimes like when she's on there and she's able to just go crazy and say whatever, like with Tiffany, and they were just swearing and like and it was obviously it was a very entertaining show. And then the last guest she had, I think it was like episode 97 or something, was Sai, who is of course her boss, a CEO, and it was at the time he was releasing his long-awaited comeback, and they had a very nice kind of informal chat. Um, and then at the end, they kind of dropped the bombshell that she was going to be leaving the show. That was going to be the last episode, and she was, and that was it. And everyone was kind of bummed out about it, but like, okay, I mean, she's done almost 100 episodes of it. Like, fair enough, she's not going to do it forever.
yeah.
Uh, let's move on with it and whatever. And then a little while after that, it's announced that she's leaving P Nation. Though what was said about that was that actually it was just the end of her. She signed a 3-year contract, and it was just the end of that contract. It wasn't like she left in acrimonious circumstances or anything.
Yeah, she
like
said
that.
no drama or anything.
Yeah, she just said big
love.
love. Yeah, just much love to all of P Nation and stuff. I mean, she calls Sai. She doesn't call Sai like when she talks to Sai. She calls him Oppa. She doesn't call him like boss or anything like that, right? She refers to him as if he's a friend, an older brother. So I don't think there's any bad blood or anything like that. But she had obviously people were starting to suspect something had gone on, something was up, and yeah, she had to say that it wasn't anything bad. She just wanted to take a new step in her career and whatnot. And then it emerged that that Sunmi was going to become the host of Showterview season 2, which wasn't announced when she was leaving. It was announced later. And to me, at first, I thought that they had planned that like after they'd already agreed to do. Like Jessi was like, right, I'm gonna head out because I haven't had a rest for a long time and I need a break. Whatever, fair enough. Okay, it's been good. See you, bye. And then the producers were like, well, this was really successful. Let's do a season 2 and find a new host. And they just called up Sunmi, and she was like, yeah, I'll do it. And that was that. But apparently, it seemed like there's a bit more to it than that.
Yeah, it's in the live video I saw of her talking about it, she was kind of saying it in a way like she was really surprised that she was like let go from being host of Showterview. She was saying kind of like a thing like both sides hadn't confirmed with each other. Like she hadn't confirmed she was still gonna do it, but she was surprised that before having the opportunity to say like, oh, I still want to do Showterview, that she was basically let go from being the host of Showterview, which to me is kind of crazy they would do that, because I feel like the whole thing is successful and built around her personality.
Yeah,
like that's definitely what makes it what it is and interesting, was Jessi's personality. I'm the biggest Sunmi fan in the world. I don't think the show's going to be anything like it was with Jessi. I don't think their personalities are very similar at all.
No, it'll be a very different vibe for sure. I think Sunmi can definitely be a good host.
Oh, I'll watch every episode. I'm just saying, yeah, like I'm just saying, it's a very different show. Yeah. Which maybe they wanted something different. I was kind of considering, did they maybe think it was too much?
Maybe, and maybe especially for the idols, because I feel like obviously a lot of the idol appearances tend to be really popular and people fans want to watch them. But if their idols end up saying something a bit risque or a bit off,
I was curious because maybe the companies didn't enjoy the loose feel of the show or something with so many idols appearing on it.
That was the thought that I had as well. It's definitely possible. Like some of the stuff, obviously it makes great content for those of us who don't care and like to see the idols be a bit more free and themselves. I think one of my favorite moments was TXT when they were doing like charades basically, and they had to explain watermelons by using the boobs.
There was a lot of amazing clips.
Subin was struggling to I can't say it. You can say it. I can't say it.
When she had Itzy on, she just dropped like a straight up F-bomb right next to Ryujin, and you could see their reactions to her were like, oh, they couldn't believe it.
It's very appealing. Yeah, when she tries to get them to swear, I think maybe that's something that companies don't necessarily look kindly on. I just remember when she asked Heechul to swear, and he just went, "Wow, shit."
Yeah, it's a little sad because there was so many great clips because of Jessi's personality that made it so entertaining. I am a little sad that that's kind of not gonna be a show anymore in that style.
Yeah, and
it was the only show in that style, in my opinion. Kind of.
Yeah, and I think the way that it looked at first was just like, okay, fair enough, you want to take a break and do your own thing and rest and go ahead, power to you. And then, okay, cool, Sunmi's doing a season of it. That's cool. Let's check this out. I hope there'll be some good content in here. It'd be different, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless, because obviously we like Sunmi and it'd be cool to see a different dynamic.
Yeah.
But then for this other stuff to come out afterwards was kind of just like, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, you
I didn't
have to
realize
wonder,
like
did
that.
Sunmi know anything like before she got
I
offered
have to
it? Or
imagine
if
she
I
didn't.
have to
No.
imagine it's just like a manager shows up and is like, "Hey, do you want to do
Yeah,
this?"
I
kind of
think
thing,
she's
you
just.
know? Like,
I would think she just got an offer being like, "You want to do this?" And she was like, "Hell yeah!"
yeah.
Like, and that was all there was to it. I don't think there was any, bad intentions on Sunmi's side. I'm sure Jessie doesn't feel any ill will towards
No,
Sunmi
I
for
haven't
it.
seen her say anything in that way.
Um,
Like,
yeah, but then the other thing is just kind of like what Jessie's intentions are in general. Because if she was hoping like I want to take a break and go away for a little bit and rest, and then come back, and then I'll keep doing Showterview, and I'll just and whatever. Fair, then cool. But now obviously she's in a slightly different spot. I think clearly it must have been her intention always to not re-sign with P Nation, but that does make me wonder what she wanted to do. So the kind of two suspected things. One is that she's going to make a kind of one woman agency type thing where she just manages herself, because I feel like that would be very suited for her and what she's about. Just so she can do the music that she wants to do and get the gigs that she wants and stuff like that. Because I think perhaps there was an element of her not always wanting to do the music that Psy was giving her or that wanted her to do.
yeah, I think it is. I mean, if she does that, now's the time, I guess, because she's super popular right at the moment. But it's also
Yeah,
like a thing, like the music she was. I feel like while she was under Psy's agency, she was being the most successful she's been.
absolutely.
Like,
She definitely had the biggest series of hits. Like Nunu Nana was a like nationwide hit. She was getting end of year nominations, awards, and stuff for that, which I don't. She's a position she's never been in before. And I mean, she had a very long career. Like girls been out here working since 2005. Like
yeah,
she's been busy. And it's taken a long time to get to that point. And obviously, but a lot of that is down to her own hard work, and obviously, it's not just to credit Psy and P Nation for it, but depending on what she wants to do with music, it might end up not having the same impact and success afterwards. So
yeah. I'm always of the opinion that if something's working really good, like it was with P Nation and her releasing, kind of being popular at that moment, releasing a lot of successful stuff, I'm always of the opinion that you should ride that wave as long as you can,
yeah,
because the longer you do, the more power you have later to do what you want.
yeah,
And so it's going to be interesting to see what she does. But yeah, I feel like she could have gone longer with how successful she is right now with P Nation and stuff.
yeah.
But she's in Sixth Sense and all that stuff too, which is like
Yeah,
I feel like a popular thing as well.
So that's the other suggestion is that she'll join Antenna. Antenna is Yu Hyol's label, which is the one that started off as a kind of indie artist label, but now Yu Jae Suk is under it, and he moved, and Miju obviously signed after she left.
Yu Jae Suk is interesting. He's created this whole like umbrella of idols after their groups,
Yeah,
kind of being in his wing of doing shows and
of,
stuff.
of entertainment. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with Miju, right? Like Miju joined Antenna with which gave her the freedom to keep doing the entertainment and stuff, but also have the option to do music when she so desires, if she so desires. And so I think that would be a logical move for Jessie as well, providing Antenna want her, of course. I don't imagine why they wouldn't. So that's certainly an option as well, but that would certainly, I would imagine, would put her down more to the entertainer side. And I don't know if her focus is more on that or if it's going to be more on music. I don't know.
She's gonna go full circle, join SM Entertainment again, and debut in Girls' Generation finally.
Yeah, definitely, that will happen. There'll finally be 9 once again. And wait, and her name is Jessie. It's like Jessica. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's Jessica's replacement.
It's literally all connected. That's crazy.
And that's how her and Tiffany are friends, right? Because they both were at SM Entertainment.
Something like that, yeah.
I have to
I don't know
imagine
much
that's how they know each other
Jessie's
originally.
days. Yeah. But at the same time, they could just be in the industry for so long and inevitably.
Jessie as an SM idol is like mind bending to me. Like it's just it's such a like she just, to me, when you look at SM Entertainment idols, and you look at the style of music Jessi does now and everything, it's crazy to me. Like it's wild to imagine.
Different vibes. Yeah, obviously, Jessi, if you're watching, we wish you all the best. I hope that whatever choices you make bear fruit. And of course, Sunmi, we know our regular viewer. We look forward to watching Showterview.
Yeah, Sunmi, if you're watching, I'm gonna watch every episode. I promise.
Okay, so other topics I wanted to cover. I guess we'll breeze through a couple of relationship things just because they're funny.
Yeah.
So JB of Got7 fame was announced to be in a relationship with a YouTuber and I think VFX or special. She's a makeup artist, I think, but she does like cool kind of VFX makeup and stuff. It's pretty cool. Called Pure D. No one really knew who she was. I mean, she was like famous in that sphere, but no one knew from the Idol fan world who knew who she was.
Yeah.
People, of course, immediately checked her Instagram out, and the reaction from everyone was, "God damn, JB, well played," because she ain't bad looking, and she I thought you were about to search her up right away.
No, I mean, on my phone underneath my desk, I was searching, but not on the computer.
Let's just say that she's quite well developed in some aspects. Let's put it that way. She's a very well-rounded individual. Okay, so everyone's kind of just like, fair play, JB, man. Like you gotta like, and it's been quite a wholesome reaction. Like obviously, Got7 are in a very different spot to what they were under JYP, and it's obviously a lot less of a controversy now that one of the members is openly dating. But everyone just kind of went, fair play, man. I want to date her too, by the looks of it. Christ. And I didn't really see any negative reactions or anything from it. So it's
always interesting when you see that with certain idols, like Taeyang from Big Bang. Everyone was like happy he got married and everything like that, to who like the happy relationship he was having. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum in that same group where like if G-Dragon's dating someone, it's like scorched earth on, so
G-Dragon has also been in the news because he liked a video on Instagram that was essentially a shipping video of him and Jenny. It's like one of those fan-made videos where they put some emotional music and then clips of the two.
He probably thought it was humorous, you know.
Well, yeah, knowing GD, he either had no idea what it was and he's been known to just like stuff that he's tagged in anyway, or he saw it and was like, "Oh, this is fucking cringe. I'm gonna like this." And,
yeah,
I don't know.
That man knows the weight that a like carries for him, you know, on the internet. He knows the weight that him double tapping that post has.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, I think, is for some reason, I think since they've been enlisted and on hiatus and whatnot, that people kind of forgot that GD is an incredibly savvy and smart businessman above all else. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's about. And regardless of whether or not him and Jenny are dating, or were ever dating, he knows what he's doing in regard to
Jenny apparently is the biggest powerhouse in the dating world. Like, I know, Kai, G-Dragon, what was it, from V from BTS? Yeah. This woman is out here collecting, like, the most powerful, famous men in K-pop, and, like,
I kind of want it all to be true, and she's actually just dated all three of them, because, like, you know, fair play to Jenny.
Yeah, props to her.
But I mean, at the same time, who would be turning her down? But, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting though, like, Jenny apparently just dates all the most famous idols in the industry, you know, like, it's just funny to me, like, every time there's a dating rumor of Jenny, and it's never with, like, a random boy group member of a lesser known group. It's always like EXO, BTS, Big Bang. It's like, okay, so it's the big three of, like, boy groups every time.
Yeah. Speaking of Nugus, Yukika is getting married. That was announced a while ago, but she's getting married to a member from her husband-to-be was revealed as a member of the boy group MAP6, who were around a good few years ago. They're not around
Props
anymore.
To the guy from MAP6.
So no idea how he pulled that one off, but fair play. They posted a video together. They seem kind of cute and happy and whatever, so I guess I'm fine with it.
See, I thought you were gonna say you
Whatever.
were announcing your wedding to Yukika on here, but I guess.
Yeah, well, clearly she didn't get the invitation. We're obviously happy for her. And then on the more silly side of that spectrum, there was a rumor that started, or issues that started from filming of Music Bank, as they so often do, where From S9 were being interviewed by the hosts, Won Young and Sunghoon from Enhypen.
I just gotta say, them as hosts is like the most visually attacked you could be by like.
I mean, Aaron and
Subin. No, I know. Oh, I forgot
timeless.
Aaron hosted, but arguably that dude from TXT though is he's from Enhypen. I mean Enhypen. Right?
Enhypen is
is ridiculous. I think he looks better than Subin in my opinion.
Okay.
Like.
All TXT fans gonna be like, "What? How dare you?"
I was switching the groups of the two dudes originally in my mind, but yeah.
But anyway, so Jihyun, the Promise's magnate, was caught kind of staring at Sunghoon after the interview, and to the point where, like, when you watch the clip, it does look a little bit. It looks a bit sus, for want of a better word. She's kind of like proper like looking at him, and then she's kind of looking at him for like a good amount of time, even while everyone else is walking. And she's still just kind of staring. But so everyone obviously, the thing was, this had more of a negative reaction than a positive one, even though they're like both like 18 or whatever.
They're on the same label, aren't they?
Technically, they're both under Hybe. Yeah.
Doesn't mean they interact or anything. Yeah,
no,
course, but yeah.
But so. And Hypen fans' engines were not best thrilled about that, and they came out and started throwing shade and being shitty as more modern K-pop fans tend to do. And she herself, actually, the company didn't say anything, and she herself came out and said that actually she was looking at Nakyung, I remember, because she had done something funny earlier, and she wanted to roast her about it. Basically, that was
so
what
she's
that
not
was what
even
she
staring at him.
Yeah. So I mean, whether or not that's true, I don't know. I mean, and also, like you said, he's a good-looking man. There's nothing wrong with.
I'd stare at him if I was there.
Yeah. So
I just told you he's a beautiful-looking man. I mean, I might just be like, "Whoa, bro!" Like this. It's to be fair in that situation though. It's like, why do people care so much? I think people care because they think it's possible. If anyone has a chance of dating that dude, it's her a lot more than the fans of the group. I think that's why they get upset.
Like, you know, the beautiful, talented magnate from S9 is certainly in them with a better shot than
their fans of dating him. Yes.
Than Gemma from New Mexico. Yeah. Like, I hate to break it to you, but it's but Promise have also kind of been in the news recently for like things that are positive but have kind of been taken in a negative way. Well, I say that first of all, they're in a car crash, which is just a negative thing, but that fortunately no one was badly hurt, everything was fine, but they had to cancel their showcase and stuff for their comeback, which sucked, but they were all fine. No one had any bad injuries or anything like that. But you know, every time you see like an idol group in a car crash thing, it makes me think of Ladies Code and stuff like that. And it's always like, oh God, like I hope this isn't bad, and this still is happening way too much. But anyway, fortunately they're all okay. But they started their promotions, and I've been doing really well. They picked up 4 wins for it so far, which is great. Obviously, well played. I mean, they only just recently, was it last comeback or the comeback before that they got their first ever win, right?
DM was the comeback before, right?
Yes. Was it or Talk and Talk?
Maybe, yeah. I thought DM was a really good one. I mean, they should have won for that, if anything, if they didn't. But
I think Talk and Talk is one they got the win for.
Interesting. DM slapped so much.
DM was great.
Like,
yeah. But anyway, so they started picking up wins, and obviously their fans were very happy about it. But certain other fans were not very happy about it, and the most vocal of these fans were actually Wances. Because Nayeon, of course, had her solo, and was promoting at the same time, and up until the other day, where she did pick up a win, she was often in direct competition with Promise and losing. And Promise were beating Nyon. They were also beating out like BTS, IVE, Big Bang, all the other groups who've been charting really high for the past however many.
How is IVE still getting
Right.
Love Dive on the charts for that? That is
Well,
insane to me. Like,
yeah,
it's been a long time now.
It's been charting that high, yeah. Just people been bumping. So basically, the thing was that they were having a higher digital score. Obviously, it's extremely convoluted to explain the way that each music show calculates its points, and each one is different. But generally speaking, they have a digital score where they look at kind of an amalgamation of charting and streaming numbers across different platforms, and then turn that through some algorithm into a point system. Somehow, despite the fact Promise's song did well, but it wasn't like number one the whole time, and it wasn't like, it was kind of floating in the top.
Did they get like a 3,000 social media
region
score or something?
No.
Sserafim was that how they did that dude or whatever? Remember?
Yeah, that happened with them as well. Like Nyon got like 1 or something.
Yeah.
And
which is ridiculous
because
I saw her get like 3 million likes on a post the other day. It's
so
like...
it more raised the question of like, hey guys, like, how is your score being calculated exactly? Because the things you say it is, we've looked at the numbers and it doesn't make sense.
Do you think it's like South Park? They throw like the ball to the dolphin and it like it picks the ball.
So what kind of emerged was that that Flubber from his fandom have very, very organized for this comeback, and they pooled a bunch of money. And fan bases do this. They collect money and they put it in like some pool, and you know, this is not unserious amount of money. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars here. And they use that money to buy download passes and streaming passes and things like that off the various music platforms that go towards these scores, especially Bugs, because Bugs, you can sign up with any international phone number and then you just buy a download pass, and you can do this an infinite number of times. So they did that. Flubber were just doing that and buying shit tons and getting enough to get Florence the maximum digital score every time. Whereas the more organic, and I'm going to put that in air quotes, the more organic streaming numbers of the other groups didn't have that, because they didn't have that same organization of the fandom, and consequently they didn't get the higher score, and they were losing.
It's always so interesting to me how serious the getting M countdown or weekly wins things and stuff is to K-pop.
Yeah.
Maybe coming from a background of listening to a genre of music that doesn't chart basically in the music charts at all, from bands that have never even been on like a Billboard, you know, chart.
Yeah, I mean,
that I don't care
I don't particularly care either. I always think it's nice when a group gets a win. But I've never been one to go out of my way to vote or pay for stuff to support them.
Yeah, because like Sunmi obviously lost to Nyon in this thing. And which artist do I listen to more? Obviously Sunmi or whatever. But right. I'm not gonna go on the internet and yell at someone about Sunmi losing to Nyon in that scenario.
But at the same time, I guess you would feel less. But if Sunmi was charting consistently higher than Nyon and she was still losing, you would perhaps feel more like, wait, that doesn't make much sense. You know, even if you don't care that much, I understand you'd be like, wait, but how do those points make sense? Because she's losing in every chart.
I mean, in my opinion, Love Dive should still win in that scenario. It's better.
It's
better than those other.
Love Dive picked up a win like last week or something.
Yeah. Despite
how long ago it came.
Well, that's what it was. It was right. It was Sunmi, Nyon, Pop Pop, and Love Dive were the three in the final running.
Oh, no, Love Dive won.
and I'm just saying, in my opinion, Love Dive is better than those. So I'm like, but I don't care that Nyon won. That's the thing. Like,
so it is what it is. But actually, what happened was, after a lot of complaints and stuff, and there were Korean fans were kind of raising issues about this as well, and making points about how international fans were bringing it up and stuff. To the point that Bugs, the chart, actually came out and said, yeah, you know what? The system isn't quite being used how we envisioned it being used. And even though it's interesting from them, because actually detrimental to them from a business perspective. But they changed the system. They changed now that you cannot register for a download pass with an international phone number. You have to use a Korean phone number to do it.
That's
So
interesting.
in one kind of fell swoop, they shut out a huge portion of international fans from being able to
I'm
get
very
to
interested
use
to
bugs
see
to
how
get
that affects
points.
certain groups, though. Like, I'm
Well,
curious to
yeah,
see now, like, who wins in that scenario, because I think that dramatically shifts certain groups from having even a possibility of getting a win.
quite possibly. It's definitely going to impact things. I mean, some of them, a lot of them are still based on like their own apps and voting in various ways. Like M Countdown is still based on you download the app and you vote with you buy bubbles or gems
So
or whatever
in
the hell they
these
call.
things, can like a
But
whale just buy like obscene amounts of like the same thing, and that counts?
you can do. There's ways to do that, yeah. And but the score is usually capped. Like there's a finite amount of points you can get in like a digital field. It's not
I'm just like
except
running
on
a
music,
scenario here. Let's say I buy like 100,000 Sunmi albums,
right?
and is
Then
Sunmi gonna get a win
then she
because
would
I bought 100,000
she,
albums?
well, probably not because Esper sold 1.6 million. But
Yeah, that's
um,
I can't buy 100,000 Sunmi albums. I definitely
but
can't buy
but
1.6 million.
but actually, it's like so it's not. They have a track. There's a tracking period, right? So it'll
Mm,
track you from like a space of 7 days. How many albums were bought in these 7 days is what determines that score.
yeah.
So normally it starts off like at a certain time when they start tracking it, and that's the point. So in theory, if you waited until there was a lot of downtime and then you bought 100,000 Sunmi albums, at least on the shows where there isn't a time frame of how long someone can be eligible, which Music Bank is the main one. Like any song released at any point is eligible for Music Bank. So which is how like Rollin was picking up wins on it. That in theory would be like it would give her a huge boost to those points. In theory.
In your opinion, was the Sserafim beating that famous solo artist,
Im Young Woon.
was that fair?
Uh it's hard to say because it wasn't like the Seraphim weren't
Doing
selling or
well,
charting. Like they absolutely were. So
because it's
I
not.
don't.
It doesn't seem straightforward. Because like that guy sold more copies or something, right? Was
Yeah,
that the
he sold
deal?
he sold 1 million in a day.
In my opinion, you should win for that alone. But
Yeah, but
I
it was
guess,
more
like,
it was more just like how it's just like you look at some of the scores and you're just like, wait, but how does that number correlate to the streaming numbers and the view numbers and whatnot that we've seen? It just doesn't make sense.
it's not
So,
unique to K-pop industry. I mean, look at like The Weeknd had the most successful like song in history, basically, like Blinded Lights, and then I think it was like 3.8 billion on Spotify or some crazy shit like that. Definitely probably the most selling album of that year and
right.
everything. And then the Grammys was like, we're not even gonna nominate you. It's
Yeah.
like, like I feel like it's music industry sometimes just has those moments where you're like, well, how does that work? We're just not even logical reasoning behind it.
Yeah. So I think Bugs has always been the chart that was easy to get the number one on as well partly because of this. I feel like ultimately I think a strong side effect of this is going to be that that groups with those big fan bases in Korea already, which tend to be the big three groups and whatnot, are just going to have a stronger monopoly on this kind of thing, and it's going to make it harder for some other groups to get the same kind of exposure. Like, I feel like the thing that matters for wins really is that it does make, like, for internationally popular groups to get a win makes the Korean audience take a bit more note. Like when Dreamcatcher got their first win earlier this year, it made Korean audiences go, huh, like they really are big, huh? Like they're just simply not aware. And they're like when Luna got a win, it was the same deal. Everyone's like, when Luna were
Yeah,
revealed
so
as one of the
without
top
that
10 sellers or whatever,
international
like,
fan
really?
base, you got to wonder if a group like Dreamcatcher could get
No
a
way.
win in this like scenario. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no
where
way.
it really affects the voting a lot. Which I think it's really unfair to close voting from international fans because K-pop is such a global music now. I feel like the true representation you get of how popular a group is the whole world's opinion of it, really.
Like I say, it's only one of many windows that international fans can use to get points for their groups towards wins. So it shouldn't change things all that much. I get why the change happened. I get wanting more transparency from music shows on how exactly their points are calculated, because what they say doesn't always seem to add up to what the points end up being. It would be cool to just be like, oh yeah, like here's the numbers we pulled from Spotify, and these are how it turned into these points, and these are the numbers we pulled from Melon and how that turned, and these are YouTube views and how that turned. Just so we know, okay, like at least here I can see all of this data and I know exactly what you're referring to. And the one thing I don't like is how people were going to town on Promise for it, when they of course had nothing to do with any of it. They didn't ask their fans to pool a bunch of money and buy a lot of download passes.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the same kind of thing with Bahie and the fans in Girls Planet, but buying a bunch of phones to vote with different SIM cards and stuff. She didn't ask them to do that.
No, it's ridiculous.
So people were like shitting on Promise for it and saying that they're frauds and they don't deserve success and whatnot is not really, doesn't sit right with me.
Even the Sserafim case, if maybe that guy could have warranted winning or whatever, I don't understand hating Sserafim for it, because it's not like they decided the parameters for which they win or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not decided by them. So you're getting angry at the people who have no responsibility for what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really dumb.
So, yeah. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
It seems like it would be such an easy... It seems like it's harder to make that system bad than it is to make it good.
Yeah, you think.
Right? Does it seem like you'd have to go out, like you go out of your way to make the any kind of voting system or anything messed up like that? Like the social media score thing, if they just had like a very simple explainable parameter for how that works, I think people would they should directly explain how each voting parameter works, rather than just being like, well, this is what happens or whatever, like that. Especially how Nyan could get a 1, like that should be explained.
Is just like,
that's not something that they should just go out, like it should be explainable how that score came about.
Yeah,
which I don't think it is explainable, because I think it's kind of a little bit of bullshit going on there. But it's it'll be interesting to see how it is now with what you're talking about, with international fans being less able to be a part of that process.
Yeah, and in other news, it's now Chase Hall's birthday in South Korea. So happy birthday, Chase Hall!
#1 visual in K-pop. Everyone's sleeping on it.
A goddess was born on this day 24 years ago, I think.
I'm gonna keep simping it. If you guys don't know, Chase Soul is the #1 visual in K-pop. Look her up.
Yeah. She's a very fine lady and very, very sweet too. Nice girl.
Irene ain't got shit on Chase Soul.
Oh god. So I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about, the other thing I wanted to talk about for this was, this is kind of getting kind of old news now, but I just wanted to talk kind of generally about the standard of journalism, especially in the West, when it comes to reporting on K-pop. And the thing that kind of set me off on this topic was an article that was released in the New Yorker back in June, called "Telling the Story of BTS" by E. Tammy Kim. And Tammy Kim is a Korean American, so she has perhaps more of a connection than most to Korea, at least. But she herself was professed to not be a K-pop fan. And obviously, just because you're Korean American, it doesn't mean that you have to be a K-pop fan. Like, you're separate from the world of K-pop, so you obviously might not have anything to do with it.
Every Japanese person listens to baby metal. I don't know what you're talking about.
That would be interesting. But every Japanese person does listen to AKB, but that's not listen to their sales. But anyway, so she kind of came out and wrote this big article about becoming a fan, basically going to see them live, and yes, that sort of stuff. And it was like it was an article that had a lot of potential to be a cool story about how BTS became the global phenomenon that they are, and how it is for someone, especially from a Korean American perspective. I think that's probably quite an interesting lens that you would have to look at it, right? Like, hey, this thing from like my quote unquote homeland is suddenly blowing up in my, like, where I live or whatever. And obviously it's different for different people and how they would perceive it. But anyway, it's a cool thing, and I think you could write article after article about BTS's success, and it never not be something interesting to talk about. There's always some new angle you can come at from it and make something interesting about it. But the choices that she made and the way that she chose to phrase things in this article, and especially the way she acted about it afterwards, were just so shit. And coming from my point of view, and I'm someone who obviously I've been into K-pop for over 10 years, and I've done journalism before. My mum is a journalist. I've written journalistic articles before. I've had things published and stuff. Not to toot my own horn, and I don't consider myself a journalist, but at least it's something a field I'm at least somewhat familiar with, and I'm aware of like some of the standards and things that should be applied to making good journalism. And just so I'll give you some examples of what I mean. So she wanted to talk about the things that BTS did in terms of their like positive work as UNICEF ambassadors,
like charity type things, right?
And stuff like that. Yeah.
So
this is how she began a paragraph in her article. Before I knew BTS's music, I knew of the members as envoys of well-being. In 2017, the same year that Kim Jong-hyun, a singer in the K-pop group SHINee, died by suicide, BTS launched a campaign with UNICEF to combat violence against children and teens. She thought of that sentence in her mind and wrote that as if that was a good way of introducing
a segue from
that part of her article. Just a little dash, and when Jonghyun died of suicide, and it made me so fucking angry.
That's not something you just like subtly drop as a mention.
Just drop that in, like, as if to say, and it reinforces this narrative that BTS is separate from K-pop. Like, oh well, the messed up K-pop industry is having people suiciding all over the place. BTS are doing great stuff everywhere, completely disregarding all of the work that Jonghyun himself did.
You would think if she's gonna drop what happened with him and his name, that then she's gonna go into like a thing about mental health, that maybe BTS talks about mental health all the time or something. But that's not where that segued to at all. It's
it was then just talking about how they did speeches at the UN and filmed a video there, and then goes into them outlasting the 7-year curse. So just a flippant comment about Jonghyun, again, who one of the most beloved idols, one of the most outspoken and progressive idols that there's ever been, and just use this as like to not even half make a point about BTS's work as UNICEF ambassadors. It's just like the fact that was written in the first place is kind of fucked. The fact that an editor read that and went, yeah, that's fine. Even if you don't know about K-pop, I as an editor would be reading that and going, hang on, why is that in there?
Why is it even mentioned in that sentence?
Another example. So this is where she's talking about the fans who identify as LGBT or whatever. So she spoke to different army around the world as part of making this article. So she spoke to an army named Wang in Chengdu, China, who identifies as gay but not publicly. And he said, there's a big queer component of BTS. The fandom feels really welcoming. Then in brackets, the author wrote, contrast this with K-pop group Big Bang, whose singers have been convicted of sex trafficking, gambling, and drug crimes, close brackets. At the same time, BTS has refrained from wading into public politics. Just why? Like what? Like
Yeah,
you're putting that
don't
in there?
see
Why?
what Sungri and the Red Sun thing has to even do with people feeling comfortable in a fandom with their sexuality.
And
I don't.
it genuinely. When I was reading this at first, part of me was thinking like this feels like a setup. It feels like provocation. It feels like it's deliberately designed to upset people in order to generate a response and get people to click on it or whatever, but also then to give a follow-up, to make the follow-up of look at how awful K-pop fans are. Look at all the
In
mean
these
things
other
they say.
fandoms or whatever. Yeah, it's like I don't understand
Yeah.
ever having the need to compare fandoms of the groups. Like, and they do it a lot with BTS, and I feel like BTS themselves probably hate that happens because like why they don't want to just be like compared all the time with whatever other group people want to throw.
And I started to suspect that it could even. I mean, this is very conspiratorial tinfoil hat and whatnot, and I'd like to believe that Tammy is just a very naive and made some very poor choices and didn't do her research, because she also just says a load of stuff that's simply not true about like how BTS is like the only ones who write their own music and stuff like that, and that's what makes them unique, and just the kind of shit that like someone who's been into K-pop
Soyeon from Idol doesn't exist apparently then,
right? Or or that they were the first who did it, and that itself isn't true, because I mean literally the group you just cited in Big Bang have been doing that. But anyway,
Super Junior has members who write their own music. I mean, yeah,
it's the kind of shit. It's just like, okay, someone who literally has just discovered BTS and has been into them for a month might not realize all of this stuff. Okay, you know, you can forgive that kind of an entry level naivete, but those fans who've been into BTS for a month aren't writing articles in the New Yorker about it.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting.
I was thinking, and I had my tinfoil hat on. So a month and a half before this article came out, another Korean American journalist called Park Ju-won released a series of Twitter threads or posts where she showed DMs that she'd received from ARMY based on things that she had said, where she's quite openly a fan of Big Bang. And so things that they say, you know, the usual stuff like go rot in hell, bitch, go lick Big Bang's ass, go lick YG's ass, all this kind of stuff. Just usual awful things that people say.
Welcome to the internet. It's terrible though. That's awful.
Yeah, like the audacity you have to talk about BTS, you're a dumb fuck, blah 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 blah, or just kind of generic shitty trash talk behavior and stuff. She used this, say this is a side that the public is unaware of, and this is like another kind of part of this topic that aggravates me, is that whenever Western media wants to report on K-pop, it's like they have a little bingo thing, and it's like, right, oh, we're gonna do the dark side of K-pop today, we're gonna do the look how mean the fans are side today, just the same, or like we're gonna do the how everyone in the industry is messed up mentally kind of thing. Like, let's pick one of these topics and just do that and not talk about anything else.
Yeah, they do it in a way as though Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj stans don't exist, and that they don't and message terrible things to people who talk about Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj or anything.
Exactly.
You know, it's like it's very common in our pop industry as well.
It's like it's just like, oh, look at this bad thing over there that's different, and I think that's what kind of shocks me about the fact that these are like Korean writers, like not living in Korea, but like Korean American writers or whatever. Like, it makes me think like that they're the ones who are being made to write these things, because obviously they can translate stuff and have a closer connection to it.
I can give you
missing so hard on
a direct example. Me and Goran one time just like posted a Taylor Swift reaction thing where like, oh, Taylor Swift dropped something, do you think it'd be interesting to watch that or whatever? And we posted that, and then because we didn't just straight up love the song or whatever, we got like attacked by a lot of Taylor Swift fans in the comments, direct message me on Instagram and everything else, and it was like, okay, fair enough. I guess I won't watch Taylor Swift anymore. Like, kind of thing. It's like, sorry, I watched Tay Swift or whatever. You know, it's like,
Right.
But I'm not gonna go make an article. Taylor Swift fans are like the plague of the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, like here's what happens if you talk about Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah, and that's what really pissed me off was that. So Tammy Kim, after she wrote this article, and people were rightfully calling her out and being like, how could you use Jonghyun's suicide as just this flippant, like, just aside as part of your as part of talking about like UNICEF campaigns and stuff.
Like
how
he's
dare
an
you?
honorable mention in your sentence or something. It's like, what?
And not even honorable.
Yeah, no,
you know.
Like, I could understand if you're gonna segue to an entire discussion
if you wanted to
mental
talk about
health
the whole
or something.
point, exactly, yeah.
And
then it should be giving the man the credit that he deserves, you know, like, yeah. So people were like, how could you do that? Like, and from what I saw, for the very much large majority of those persons, Shawol, a fandom who are, you know, tend to be older and more mature and been through a lot, you know. So, and they basically are just going like, man, like, just edit that. That taking that sentence out of your article doesn't affect the article in any way. It doesn't make the article worse. You're not missing out.
It's adding nothing to what you're discussing.
So just edit it out, and we don't have a problem, and we can move on. And she was just like, completely refused to engage with any of it, just completely ignored it. And she was tweeting stuff just like, oh, like anytime someone posted a thing saying, oh wow, great article by Tammy in the New Yorker, really give it a read. Really cool stuff. She would quote that and be like, thanks a lot. Sorry, you're going to get hate now. Something like that. And just like, oh yeah, the fans are going to attack you now. Just that, like, but then at the same time, just not engaging with any of the genuine criticism that she was receiving. And just that head in the sand. Oh, look at these mean K-pop fans are just cyberbullies and not actually listening to what they're saying. Because in this case, they're not just saying, go to hell, you dumb bitch. Like Armin was saying to Juwon. It was people saying, like, you should not use a beloved progressive singer's name and suicide as a flippant aside in your article. Yeah. A very valid criticism, and she was completely ignoring it. And to date, it's still ignored it.
Business-wise, it makes sense for her in the New Yorker not to get rid of it. More people are going to the article and clicking on it because that is a thing.
Yeah. Which
is unfortunate side of how a lot of journalism works now.
Yeah,
hate clicks are like one of the number one ways to get people to your article.
It really grinds my gears, because yeah, the way that K-pop is treated is just like, oh, here's that fad thing that lots of crazy people like, and not his really cool music that is affecting people, that is impacting people around the world in a positive way and bringing people together in ways that hasn't been seen for a long time, really, and in many ways hasn't been seen before. And it's not just a thing of like, it's a trend and will die out, you know. Like,
yeah, I've seen a lot of distasteful articles when they bring up that particular subject. I remember because it happened with Soli and Guhara after and stuff, and you'll see articles when all that was happening where it's just like Jonghyun and other K-pop idols killed themselves kind of article thing.
Yeah.
Where all these other idols were just like an attachment to the first one, you know,
like they weren't real human beings with thoughts and feelings and principles and especially I think
really
the
distasteful to attach
they were.
Yeah.
So then recently, this was only last week, Rolling Stone released an article about Blackpink.
Oh god.
But this is perhaps a better way of doing it. So they were talking about each member, and generally speaking, the article was kind of a typical article about Blackpink, but it was pretty good. I would say, like, and Rolling Stone generally is, as music journalism goes, is quite solid and has been for a long time, right? That's why they're successful. But they kind of did this like overview of the group, and they did like little sections about each member, and this was all fine. And then when they got to talking about Jisoo, They said Jisoo does not possess the most outstanding talent in the group as a vocalist or dancer. And then they were using that to say how much she's grown in, like, basically saying she's not the most talented, she's not like the best singer, she's not the best dancer, but look how well she does, you know. And I get that, wanting to say that, but the way they phrased it wasn't great.
Yeah,
and
that's
people
not
were
the
kind of like, wow, that's
right way to write that sentence.
yeah.
That's
like,
not...
you can talk about her growth without phrasing it in that way, and it came off very backhand.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to just say since her debut she has grown a lot as an idol.
Yeah.
That is a nice way of saying that without saying anything bad about her. Like, that is...
And then for Lisa, they said that she I
saw that she has an exotic look.
Yes, an exotic appearance. Yeah. And everyone's like, okay. And then they said that her pronunciation was really good, and it didn't make her seem too foreign or something. Which is just kind of like that's a very Korean way of looking at it. But this was Rolling Stone Korea that wrote it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just kind of like, what? So, but anyway, obviously Blinks were mad. Blinks not mad. They came and trended hashtags of, respect Jisoo, apologize to Lisa, blah blah blah. But Rolling Stone came out and they said they released this response yesterday, I believe, saying, "Hello everyone, this is Rolling Stone Korea. We have listened, have read, and have taken in all the considerations and remarks regarding the recent Blackpink column. We admittedly noted we used inappropriate choice of words and context that led to this misunderstanding. A revised and modified column will be published in the second edition of the print next week. The revised column will be on our official website. We apologize to the artists for causing concerns. We ask for patience with us. Thank you." Which, generally speaking, I think was a solid apology. Yeah,
Rolling Stone is big enough that they could have just ignored it completely.
Yeah.
But
they could have done what the New Yorker did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think with the Blackpink fandom, that would have gone really, really bad.
Right.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of handling that, though, an actual apology and stuff. I don't know. Like, the article you're talking about in the New Yorker, I think if she did just remove that sentence, then everyone would just be like, okay, fair enough with the article or whatever. Like, I don't think that people would care as much if she just removed that sentence from the whole article. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it makes sense to keep the sentence in there from a business sense because it makes more people find out about the article and click on it, which is an unfortunate side of journalism now, where they really want people to, no matter how it's perceived, go to the website and click on the article.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess the one other thing I wanted to talk about on this topic. So Ju-Won Park, the guy I mentioned who shared all of the cyberbullying stuff, another journalist came out and also shared similar kinds of things that he'd received, and basically said that, and these are journalists based in Korea but writing in English, and saying like, yeah, it's actually like, we're afraid to make articles because we will always get personally attacked. If we say, well, no matter what we say, we'll always get attacked. And they ended up hosting a forum, and I feel this is an element of this is something that I don't feel like we're qualified to talk about, because it's about how the voices of black journalists and people of color are kind of silenced when it comes to these kinds of forums in general. And I actually I'm kind of curious to talk to my friend Sarah about that, because she is a black K-pop journalist, and a very good one at that. And maybe at some point we could see if we could get her on the show and she could give us her take on it. But basically they held a Twitter space, like one of those things where you can have multiple people in and doing a voice thing on Twitter, and that was probably not the best way to handle this. And essentially it led to a black journalist kind of being shouted down and like having to leave the call and stuff, and it was messy. It was very messy. So anyway, I won't go into too much detail about that one, because maybe we can cover that more at a later date.
Yeah.
But the one final point I wanted to make was kind of how shit the highest standard of K-pop journalism is, because I think perhaps the most recognizable or famous K-pop journalist is probably Jeff Benjamin, right? At Billboard. He's probably the biggest name in Western K-pop.
Billboard definitely does like the most articles I've seen about K-pop and stuff in Western journalism.
Yeah. So and Jeff Benjamin was involved in this kind of these discussions and stuff, and he's he's been involved in the scene for many years, but he's always come off to me as an extremely insincere person who is not actually that keen on the music or the scene, and he's simply
like his boss shows up, hey, write another article about like
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but he said some stuff in the past that is extremely questionable and really not okay. So this is what they said about G Friend. I forget which song this was about. Sickeningly soft and sweet. They're just there coasting, releasing the same thing for every comeback. It's probably for pervy old men, little schoolgirls up there twirling. They're wearing schoolgirl-looking outfits, doing their weird formations as usual.
Weird formations? Is he just talking about the choreography?
Yeah, but obviously the thing that people took issue with was the comment about them being for pervy old men and just dressed as schoolgirls and whatnot.
I find the idea of talking about K-pop videos as perverse a little stupid when we're talking about music, because if you look at Western like music, pop music, and you're gonna pretend like we don't have like the most perverted music videos and lyrics that exist in any genre of music, it's like, I mean, it's just a little dumb to bring that up as like a talking point. In K-pop.
I think generally speaking, he just doesn't do any real insightful commentary or anything. He just kind of says very generic things and just And after this, the G Friend thing, he came out on Twitter and said like, basically it was all misleading. He was like, false, misleading graphics and audio clips making it seem I've been making fun of the way people speak English, which is because you had a thing about BTS as well. And then it was like, I shared with G Friend fan accounts about the discussion we had over those comments, and they said like the things they were saying to me were even more serious. Basically doing that same like now playing the victim card and being like, they're saying mean things to me now that I've just dismissed all of their music.
You said something to anger a fandom and they got angry at you.
So just kind of shitty, and it's a shame that kind of person, obviously this was 5 years ago, so maybe he's changed or whatever, and maybe he's grown as a journalist and certainly grown in stature, but I feel like there has to be a higher bar set for what can be achieved with K-pop journalists.
I've always found it interesting when a music journalist gets to just somehow be qualified to cover all genres of music, in a sense.
Right.
When
let's talk about music in general.
Because I've seen a lot of metal reviews and discussions in journalism sometimes where I saw a guy say that metal is not music, but it's a sport of like people just trying to show how fast they can play or something. And I was like, well, just because you don't enjoy it does not make it not music or whatever. It's
also wrong. That's also wrong in so many ways. Like, not every subgenre of metal is about speed.
There's literal slow sludge genres of metal. But he said it didn't invoke a feeling in him or something. If I find the exact article, I'll link it. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, it didn't invoke a feeling in you. That doesn't mean other people don't have a feeling when they listen to it.
Even if the feeling is one of revulsion, sometimes that's the intention.
But it's the same thing, I think, when people cover K-pop. Okay, you did not, like me personally, I don't enjoy certain types of K-pop that are overly cutesy or something, but I am not going to tell someone they should not like that, and that it's not music or something, and that it's weird or that it's all this other stuff that people want to say about it, because it's like, you can't put that on any type of music, because there's people who enjoy it and people who don't.
It goes into in even just like looking at the music, like you can sometimes it can be like, wow, I can really appreciate that this song is like objectively extremely well constructed, but it's just not my vibe. Like of my friend Ava, for example, who frequents the Twitch streams and whatnot and YouTube comments, he said to me, like, he knows that, like, Yerin Beck, for example, he knows her music is really good. Like, he knows it's really good, but he doesn't really enjoy listening to it because he said, in his words, I don't like having to think when I'm listening to music. I just want to have my easy, catchy pop song, and I don't want to have to get into intricate.
And I get
musicality
that
and
too,
stuff.
because there's like prog metal, and I enjoy it
Yeah,
as a musician, but I totally understand someone not wanting to listen to prog metal.
yeah,
Like as a normal listener, not wanting to hear like Dream Theater or something,
yeah.
you know?
Right.
Like,
That's immediately what I was thinking of.
yeah.
But it's like, yeah, that's ultimately what being a fan of music in general should all be about, right? It's just that respecting each person's individual tastes and what they like and what they don't like doesn't matter. But just when something is bigger than just the music, as the K-pop world definitely is, because it is more than just the music, but whether that's a good thing or bad thing. Um, but the way that then people choose to convey messages about that to the international audience, especially since it always seems to be somewhat geared, not the articles tend to be geared towards a readership that isn't K-pop fans.
I feel like in Western media they write about K-pop assuming that K-pop fans believe that they should like it as much as they do, when really I think K-pop fans just want it treated with the same amount of respect you
Yeah,
would an American pop artist when you're writing about
yeah.
them.
And I think they feed into the elitism that a lot of music fans who aren't K-pop fans have towards it, where it's like, oh, look at this fad thing. It is just like it is all girls in schoolgirl outfits twirling around and being cutesy. That's all it is. It is all just boys trying to act cool, but they're all effeminate
I
or
mean,
whatever.
imagine seeing like Cheer Up from Twice and just assuming, okay, that's what they are or something.
That's
You know,
all of
like,
K-pop. Yeah.
that's all of K-pop. But I mean, even with Twice, that is such a like one part of them as a group or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have such a massive reach of genre they've covered.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just ridiculous to me because there's groups you could watch a really cutesy music video and just assume that you could paint the whole genre that way.
Yeah. And like I remember Jeff Benjamin's talking about Margot and talking about the songwriting that the members had done on that album and like how great it was. And I wonder if he was sitting there thinking, man, I was a fucking idiot 3 years ago when I said all that stuff. And I really hope that thought crossed his mind, but I feel like there's an arrogance in these journalists which makes them think that they're always right, and when people call them out, they're just being cyberbullies, and that's not a great attitude to have. And I feel like it's really led to some. I mean, the standard of world journalism and media in general is awful in the internet, social media age, but it's especially bad when it comes to K-pop.
I feel like in music journalism they go so far in research and try so hard for certain artists like Adele or someone like that. And people are only asking for the artist they like to be treated with that same like level of respect and in you looking as much into the background of that music and artist as you do into artists you like.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm gonna talk about someone's music, review it, and an artist, I'm going to learn as much about them as artists I enjoy listening to before I would say anything about their music or them as an artist. Like, I'm not just gonna glance at a song and then be like, well, that's what they do, and then be like, that's them.
And I feel like that was certainly a way that I was when I was younger and I was immature and certainly more snobby with music than I am now. Like, especially when it would come towards like I think at the time like Iggy Azalea, for example, I was just like, well, this is just shit, and there's no substance to this at all. But now it's like, you know, any artist, even if I don't like the music, I can be like, well, I respect the person and I respect that they are telling a story, their own story, and making money from it. So fair play to them. I'm not going to listen to it, but I'm not going to hate on them or their fans for it either. And just, yeah, if I was to release a video being like, hey, I didn't like this song, and then the fans started attacking me, I wouldn't be like, I don't believe how awful their fans are. Me, I did nothing wrong. You know, just playing this indignant victim. It's just.
Yeah. If you say, I feel like they say something knowing they're going to get that reaction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to know at some point if you're going to talk about a fandom in a certain way or a group in a certain way, that you're gonna get a reaction to it.
Yeah, exactly. Just that being provocative and then being surprised when you provoke people is becoming very tiresome very quickly. And then people writing articles about it while simultaneously ignoring genuine criticism and response and politely worded responses is it's just not very good. That's the best way of summing it up.
Even if you don't like something, I feel like there's always a good way to explain why you don't like something without attacking a fandom or a group.
Or equally, if you do like something, explaining why you like that thing can be done without putting in context of bad things that happen to other people.
Yeah,
like that shouldn't impact your enjoyment of something.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the same amount of effort that they put into reviewing like the next Weekend album should be put into how they review a K-pop artist and stuff.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't seem like there's always that same amount of effort or input put into it across both sides.
Yeah, I when Pitchfork started doing occasional K-pop album reviews, I was like, that's cool, because I guess Pitchfork is like the hipster Bible, right? That's how people always view it. Is like the most kind of objective music review source sites, where like they don't have any. Maybe they do have some favorites, but they will be harsh on anyone, even people that they've given really high scores to. If they release something bad, they'll shit on it. They don't beat around the bush in that regard. So when they started doing K-pop reviews, it was kind of cool, but they basically only did like one or two BTS, Blackpink, twice Red Velvet, and that was it. And
that's all of K-pop. You just named all of K-pop.
Yeah, and they didn't even cover each release as they were happening by each artist or whatever. They just kind of, sometimes they would make an offhand mention of it, and it's like, if you're gonna commit, like you need to commit. You can't. Yeah,
we were talking about Rolling Stone earlier. One thing they do well is they have people, it seems like, that are there that are specialized in a certain topic matter.
Yeah.
I've seen when they do talk about metal and certain bands, Iron Maiden and really popular bands and stuff like that have massive fandoms that would be very bad if you said something about them. They usually have someone who has a background in that genre talk about it.
People know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of the time they'll have a guy who's like Ross Halfon. He's like a famous photographer who went around photographing like all of the stuff with Metallica and Maiden, those bands back in the day, and he'll give like input on some of that stuff sometimes. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. You had someone who knows what they're talking about specifically do an article about it. So I don't understand why some of these companies don't just have someone who listens actively to K-pop who is a journalist or something to do that side of their music journalism.
Yeah.
Rather than someone who has no involvement in it at all and just then giving their random opinion on it, basically.
Yeah, and if you're if you're lacking enough people who have interest in talking about these kinds of things, we're right here. We'll do it.
Yeah.
You can pay me.
We are offering our services.
Plenty of K-pop albums I could write reviews for.
Yeah, just in general, treat K-pop with the same respect that you do any other genre of music.
Yeah, imagine that it's your favorite band being talked about, and think if you would appreciate someone making a flippant comment about if you were a big fan of Nirvana, imagine if someone just made a offhand comment about Kurt Cobain's suicide in an article about some other band.
I have seen some bad articles written about metal bands that I do enjoy, and I usually just have to laugh it off because it's like people who think that metal is just and that is Hail Satan. And that is all that exists. It's a thing. You'll tell people you play metal music or something, and they'll have like a kind of reaction like, oh, you scream and all this stuff. It's like, no, I don't. Right. There's more than screaming in metal and stuff. Like, but I think with K-pop, people have the same assumption, like, oh, it's just like really cute and they're jumping around in schoolgirl outfits all the time or something. It's like, it's a lot more in depth than what you just described. I'm not going to say there's not something like that exists, because just like in metal there is something like just and screaming, but that is literally one small % of what the entire genre is, and it's the same thing with K-pop.
Actually, I remember I was playing Stellaris. You know Stellaris, like space strategy game.
Yes, okay, I do know what you're talking about.
I was playing that with some friends. And they're like, these guys are pretty like edgy internet guys, as most Paradox game players are, and they're most of them are pretty big into metal. Like if they had to pick the genre of music that they would call their own, then they would say it's metal.
Yeah.
We were playing Solaris, and they were like, "Oh, we should have some like fitting music playing, like some spacey kind of music." And I was like, "Hey, I've got some like K-pop that's appropriate." And they were all immediately like, "Nah, fuck off! Like you can't play K-pop like this." And I was like, "We like you can't really play metal either." And I was like, "All right, give me a shot." So okay, so I played La Di Da, and and they were like, "Okay, no, this is a banger." And they were like, "Yeah," and they were like, "I didn't think this." They were like, "I didn't think that K-pop sounded like this," you know. And I was like, "It doesn't. This song sounds like this. There are other songs that sound like other songs, like completely different ones. There's no one type of sound."
La Di Da is just a certified banger, no matter what music you like. I mean, that retro like synthwave style is just perfect. But a good example of that is you've seen my buddy Zach, who hops in the lives sometimes, and stuff. He listens like only to Frank Zappa and like older kind of like Grateful Dead style of like music a lot of the time. That very 70s rock kind of style, 60s music. He would most of the time have zero interest in something like K-pop. And generally before he had only seen Blackpink, so that would be like his assumption is like that's what it sounds like. But I remember I was like, no, there's this group called Red Velvet. I was like, come on, let me show you some of this. I was like, let me throw good old Psycho on for you. And then, you know, there's like Kingdom Come and just some really good, amazing B-sides. And then he was like, oh, wow, I would have never imagined there was this side to the genre or whatever. Because if someone hears Blackpink, they're not going to assume Red Velvet is the other side of that or something, you know.
And I think, obviously, you must think to yourself, if you were just trying to look at it as objectively as possible, be like, okay, a country like Korea is going to have has to have a pretty rich, diverse music scene, right?
Yeah.
But you look at the most popular groups to come out of it, especially, like we said, coming back from like 2018 onwards. So you look at like BTS kind of from Boy With Love on, as in from Boy With Love on, not including the song On, and look at Blackpink and go, well, these are the two most popular groups that have come out of Korea internationally. And then maybe you might know Psy or something and be like, so it's all just like, that's what it is. It's all like
mixes of like EDM and super fast tempos. And just like excitable pop music.
And very like inoffensive pop music alongside it. It's just fun, right? You wouldn't think that there are groups that are hugely popular, because it's not like Red Velvet aren't some indie niche group. They're also extremely popular, like just as the same as a whole bunch of other artists. And to think that you could have, even from the same label, with BTS, TXT, and Hypen making very different sounding songs that are all great. you
can't show like Drunk Days from Enhypen is a really good example of like something that is very different from BTS in my opinion. Like but they're on the same company, and that's a good example of like how different the genre can be. Dreamcatcher existing is like a total wrench in the cog of the idea of what K-pop is, you know. There's groups branching off of that even more, with like Pixie and certain groups that kind of do that darker style as well.
That reminds me of one final point to talk about the about just shit fucking
oh no, did
K-pop journalism.
Did someone review Dreamcatcher?
This is a bit okay, this is going to be a bit of a challenge because this article is in Korean. Oh, it's another Rolling Stone article. Rolling Stone is getting dumped on a little bit here. So this was written in Korean originally, I think. So it's just about cool rock revival, K-pop. Right, I'm trying to translate this. Okay, let me just Google translate the page and I'll give you the gist of it. So stand up rock fans, wherever you go you can hear the sound of electric guitars and stuff. Have you had your Nirvana, Iron Maiden, Metallica, AC/DC rock t-shirts? You know, your Metallica rock t-shirt that, you know, you've got
everyone
those, right?
has one.
Yeah. It's time to take them out. They're emerging as trendy fashion items now. You'll find idol groups wearing leather jackets, making gestures of devil horns, and so on.
Oogie wearing a Metallica shirt, I'm fine with it. It can happen every day of the year. Okay.
So they start off talking about TXT and 17. So they said TXT released Love Song, and 17 released Rock With You. Taeyeon released Can't Control Myself, which is, I guess you could say, is like pop punk, right? Like Avril Lavigne kind of. Same as they also talk about Smiley, again, which is pop rock, pop punk, I would say.
Pop punk definitely has had a big thing going on in K-pop.
Yeah. And that's what they're talking about. So then they talk about N-Mix, saying that OO was like embraces both Bale funk and clear teenage rock. NCT Dream played a distorted guitar performance during the dance break for its song Buffering instead of glitch mode. Idol's new single Tomboy was a rage in the beginning of 2022 and blended rock attitudes with K-pop most successfully. And then it kind of talks about it's like the K-pop fans are more astute to trends. They caught the whiff of the convergence. I'm very good at that. People expressing their interest in this because people around in their 20s who have become the kind of main buyers of K-pop. Obviously, this is big nostalgia for a lot of us, right? People around my age who grew up with that kind of music. It's like, oh, this reminds me of insert artist here, right? Then it says, let's analyze the trend further using case of three teams. They talk about TXT, and they talk about Enhypen, and they talk about Idol. Not once does this article mention Dreamcatcher. This is an article talking about rock in K-pop, and it does not mention Dreamcatcher one time.
Literally, the group that fuses that as a whole concept.
That has been doing that since 2017 without success and just kept on plugging it, and now it's become a trend, and they've got to win. They're still getting overlooked because a group did it.
Yeah, it's a shame because those groups they mentioned barely dive into that concept, except for like TXT. I feel like does dive more into it than others.
Like they just started to dip their feet in it more. Yeah. Like I mean, like Enhypen's recent EP, like that's definitely very more rock oriented.
Yeah, Dreamcatcher definitely helped make that style like palatable in K-pop. Like,
well, it definitely showed it definitely showed to K-pop companies that there is a market for that kind of music internationally, even if it isn't that prominent domestically. But now, especially Tomboy has shown that there is also a market for that domestically. And I feel like to the point that fans or like Koreans were saying, I like this. I don't normally like K-pop idol music, but I like Tomboy. Or same with that. Similar things were being said about TXT as well. Even like people who were girl group only fans were then I should not say that. People who only liked girl groups were saying that
girl group only
were saying that TXT were like one of the only boy groups that they like listening to, or 17 were one of the only boy groups they like listening to. So yeah. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to touch on that as like a final thing. Just like I appreciate that you're doing an article about this. It's certainly something that bears talking about because it is an interesting trend that has started to emerge from recently. I also would point out Woods as well. I think Woods released that EP earlier this year that was very
you're right. That was
rocky.
The music video too was kind of
yeah.
With he had the shirt off and all the dancers grabbing him right in the
but to make all of that and to overlook Dreamcatcher, and again, I don't think it's like Dreamcatcher were necessarily influencing the artists themselves. I don't think Soyeon was listening to Dreamcatcher and decided that she wanted to do that.
But they were doing it first.
It's still worth talking about. It just kind of feels like a big oversight. But at least he didn't shit on them while writing it. Instead,
I wouldn't say there's anything bad about that article. Just that they forgot to mention someone
just
very
important, a glaring oversight
to that style. Yeah. It'd be like making a thrash metal article and me just being like not talking about Metallica or Megadeth or something. It's a little weird to not bring it up, but I guess if they didn't know about it, they didn't know about it. I mean, fair enough. Yeah. Overall, I think me and you were both just saying that when people do talk about K-pop in music journalism, it should be treated with the same amount of respect that people are treating other genres of music.
Yeah.
There's no reason to just start. It doesn't make sense to me when people find one weird thing about any genre and decide that's what that genre is about.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine just deciding that satanic Norway death metal is like the only thing
mayhem.
That exists.
It's only mayhem.
Like,
and every metal band that has the same story.
Every metal
mayhem.
band paints themselves with white face paint and then screams about Satan.
Yeah.
You know,
and serves necklaces made from their singer's skull fragments.
Yeah, every metalhead fan is going to burn a church when they're done.
Yeah, everyone is going full Varg. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's yeah. Just treat every genre with respect. I don't like country music, but
how dare you?
I'm going to make
this off. I'm leaving.
I'm not going to make a review about Garth Brooks' upcoming album and then shit all over it. You know, yeah. Anyways, I think that was all of our. This has been. I think. What are we going to call this? KPOH News Network. This has been our general news topic of the day. I'm Honan.
News about news and news about writing of news.
News about
like
the
that.
discussion of music news.
Yes.
Well, that has been it for the K-pop podcast. I'm Honan.
I'm Oliver.